Hey everybody, Dream Akumi here. I figured I'm going to do a quick video, which is probably not going to be as quick as I'd like it to be, talking about different miniatures and their pros and cons. This video is going out to my buddy Jordan. Jordan's a really good guy. He's just now getting into painting figures and D&D. I think he's got a good natural talent, but he doesn't know much about the hobby or the different types of figures out there. So I thought I'd at least walk through certain ranges and popular ranges and some cheap alternatives and different stuff out there that you can find and the pros and cons. So we're going to start this off with Reaper. Reaper Miniatures is a miniatures line that's been around since, I want to say, the mid-90s or so. Maybe early 90s. But their big thing that's really popular is they have these cheap figures called Reaper Bones, which are made out of a type of PVC. Super soft plastic. You can bend. They can, you can really kind of go at them. They can take a bit of a beating without too much trouble, and they're above all else, these are quite affordable. Most Reaper Bones figures are incredibly cheap, with not many going above that $10 mark. The $10, $20, $30 figures. There's a couple of $40 figures. There's one that's like $75, and there's another one that's like $150, which is a giant 5-headed dragon. But the majority of figures that we're talking about here are well under the $15 mark, and there's tons of different sculpts. They're really good, really soft. Detail on them's a little soft, in my opinion, and they are a little tricky to paint. I prefer to give these a good solid base coat before I really do paint work on them, because even with brushing and cleaning, sometimes paint just has trouble sticking to them occasionally. So a good wash, a good brush, and once it's all good and clean, hit it with a good primer type deal. Paint on primer is okay, or airbrushed on primer is pretty good. Spray on can be a little tricky. So that's their trade-off, but they're very affordable and very durable. The advantage to these, though, is that there's a ton of big figures for them. So there's like this guy, Orcus, who is a massive figure, and this guy's like $13, and he just towers. This is a Bones figure, so if you need big baddies or big monsters, it's a good benefit. Oh, see, super durable. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about. The other popular Reaper line is their metals, which is practically everything else. There are a lot of metal sculpts that are in the Bones line. These are a little bit more detailed. I'd say in a lot of cases, especially with the monopose, they can be a lot more durable. They can be one of the disadvantages that the Bones have is that they are not very durable to heat. I would not leave Bones figures in a hot car. Thinner models will droop, swords will bend, all kinds of stuff, and then you got to fix them with a heat gun or with hot water. These, you can leave them in a hot car. I wouldn't drop them, because then they can dent. If they are multi-part pieces, they will break, and it sounds like a light bulb breaking. But they're lead. They have a nice heft to them. Well, these aren't lead. They're pewter. My bad. You will find occasionally lead figures, though. They're pretty good. And Bones take, like I said, Bones take to paint. Here's a couple of painted ones. We've got an Evil Warrior. My lighting needs to be better. And we've got type of wraith here. Yeah, there we go. The wraith is metal. You can just tell by how heavy it is. You know, this guy's pretty lightweight. He was a conversion. Originally, the model does not come with the shield. So that was one of the big benefits, is I could cut that he had a sword on. He had a sword in his hand, axe in his hand. And I just cut that sword out, which took all but a split second. Put a shield on, and he looks fine. It looks fine. Now, I don't have an unpainted version of this, or any smaller guys really that are painted and ready. They're all some level of painted. These are the WizKids Unpainted line. They're supposed to be cheap on paper. There's a lot of the smaller guys. They sell for like 2 for $5 or 2 for $4, depending on where you're at. They do sell the one big figs for $5 a pop. I liked a lot of the big figs, but I'm running into a huge problem with these, and the fact that they are some of the best figures, the most in-demand figures, are just not available. Like, we have like 5 stores here in our area. Not one of them has this beholder. I cannot find this beholder for the $5 MSRP. I can find secondhand sellers who buy them up, and they are $30 to $40 occasionally. But the $5 figure, I guess they just don't produce enough of it, or stores don't get enough, and there's a huge scalper market for some of the more desirable sculpts. I've started to run into the same problem with the Pathfinder White Dragon. These, they say they come pre-painted with Vallejo primer. I ended up kind of having to prime them anyway, or hit them with a thick base coat, much like the Reaper Bones. Something about it just did not like to stick to my Citadel paints. In practice, in theory, the $4 or $5 models I think are great. I think that these are the closest thing to give Reaper Bones a run for their money. But they got to really figure out how to get this distribution down to deal with some of the scalping issues, because the Beholder is ridiculously hard to come by, and this is a figure that was sold out honestly in like a day. At least around here. I still have trouble finding one online. I'm happy to have my one, but I would not pay much for him. I would not pay the price that they want for him. Oh, another brand that you'll have to run into. I only got this guy with me here. This is Citadel or Games Workshop miniatures. Games Workshop miniatures are very beautiful, very well sculpted. Most are multi-part kits that have customization. They have everything from sci-fi to science fantasy to full-on fantasy. Great stuff, beautiful stuff. The big drawback is price point. This is a limited edition Slambo. This retailed for like $30 out the gate. There are characters that push that price normally. I don't own a lot of Citadel figures that are current. I don't plan on it. The price is just a little too prohibitive for what I do. But if you really want a figure that wows your group, Citadel's a good way to go. Now, this is Resin, which I'm going to get into in a minute, but the majority of what they have out right now is straight up plastics. Another one that gets expensive is the Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons. I think it's like Pathfinder, what they call them, the Pathfinder Battles. Yeah, Pathfinder Battles, and the Dungeons and Dragons Icons of the Realms. These can get very expensive. The big problem with them is that you buy them in random packs. So you find a set that's available. They sell you in like packs of 4, and depending on if they have like a giant figure, giant figures in the set, you're looking at about $15 to $17 or so, give or take, for 4 figures. And it's at random, so you don't know what you're getting in that pack. You don't know if you're really, if the money's really worth it. The upside is that a lot of them are pre-painted, which saves you a fair bit of work. If you don't want to paint, or you don't want to do a lot of painting, they can be pretty good. Especially the bigger guys like this Xanathar. I really love this Xanathar beholder, but he can get he's a chase figure. He's very expensive. Meanwhile, we got a little cleric here, and this is from the Pathfinder line, and it's not amazing. It's serviceable. You need a player character or something, and you don't really want to cook up a whole lot of work. These are pretty good for that. I personally do like to take some of these figures and repaint them or touch them up. However, I wouldn't want to do that to like Xanathar, because it's an expensive figure. I can't replace, at the moment I really can't replace it without, a hefty hit to the pocketbook. But if you need bulk figures, you can find lots of these online for a little cheap. If you don't need some rarer figure, you can save a few bucks, and some time and money if you need a monster. There is a downside to these, though. Sometimes these figures aren't painted very well. Where's that smaller one? I had a smaller one. There's a smaller one. So, for instance, the Demi Gorgons. This is from their Classic Monsters kind of set. They had a box set of nothing but Classic Monsters. This thing was painted atrociously. They wanted $80 for a box of 10 figures, and this guy, the creme de la creme, the big guy, was painted so poorly, and I just could not justify the $80. I basically had to go over it, hit it with a bunch of washes, and then actually do a little bit of detail work just to give it some interest. I was very disappointed. So some of these figures come out decent. Some of these figures, they do them very basic, and sometimes the figures are just painted so badly it's not worth it. So the D&D and Pathfinder pre-paints, buy at your own risk. Last but not least, I was going to talk about resin, and we have these are, this isn't last but not least either. These are the Gale Force 9 resin figures. Now, resin, which goes back to Slambo here, resin figures are lightweight. They're very crisp in the detail, like a lead would have, or a pewter, or, very sharp details to them. They're very lightweight. They definitely can feel like a premium product, but on a technical level, these are probably some of the worst to work with. From Gale Force 9, I have run into issues with lead, why do I keep mentioning lead? I am just all thumbs today. This is a pewter Minsk and Boo. Not pewter. Jesus Christ, I am out of it today. This is a Minsk and Boo done in resin. The sword is a little warped, which you got to use a little bit of hot water to kind of fix, much like you would bones. And the model had air pockets. Like, There was one in his foot, so he's got this weird lean. There was an air pocket in his base, which kind of cut through the whole model. It was very, very bad. If you don't have air pockets, occasionally you'll have brittle figures. My Strad von Zarovich on Nightmare, the horse is on a peg, and the peg goes onto the base. Well, where the hoof on the horse met the peg that goes into the base, it was very, very frail, very thin, and very prone to breaking. So, to my shock and awe, handling the figure gently, it snapped. And instead of trying to figure it all out, the peg's right there, still sticking out of the ground like it's a rock, and I just glued the horse directly onto the base in a few spots so it had a little bit of extra strength to it, and it's been holding up since. I would not recommend resin for anyone kind of new to the hobby. You have to clean them like bones. They're brittle. They're very hard to paint in a lot of cases. These are like collector pieces almost. I would not buy these unless it was a figure I was really after. This kind of confirmed that bias. Minsk and Booze, all kinds of beat up. This dwarf's okay, but it came with a set that had a vampire Drelsna. Drelsna was no-go. It was broken in so many spots that even just taking it off the sprue was a terrifying problem. So those are the most common types of figures you're going to be running into. I guess we're going to go through a few savings, a few tricks you can learn, hacks. Good old hacks. So, one of the things you can do, and probably the easiest thing you can do, is find old figures. Oh shit, I already forgot about this. I'm going to skim over this real quick. These are Hero Forge minis. These are 3D printed. I really wouldn't suggest them if you do them in the white. In the gray, this is the gray material. Isn't too bad, but I really can't justify the $35. Get them if you really want a custom figure, but I would get a lot of painting experience before you do it. All right, hacks. Back to the easy hacks part. These are Mage Knight figs. Oh, there's another Mage Knight fig. Tall drink of water. Mage Knight figs are to a dead game called Mage Knight. It works like HeroClix. You could really say you can do this with some HeroClix as well. The clicks, or the bases, kind of had this rotating thing where they kept track of stats. It was a really fun game, but there's no support for it. So, what I like to do with these, you can buy huge lots of these figures. The sculpts are decent. The paint jobs are usually god-awful. But the sculpts are usually, they're okay. Some are a little rougher than others, but you need a bunch of NPCs or a bunch of goblins or a bunch of orcs. You can buy like boxes of Mage Knight for fairly low prices. And your price per figure will drop dramatically. Downside is you gotta take them off this. So I like to carefully take an X-Acto knife and kind of pry them a little loose, and the glue will give up the ghost, and you can slap them onto other bases. It's a good way to save some money. Like this ogre, or this Cyclops looking dude, I think he's only like $10 online. And there's some other ones that I found that are fairly cheap. So here's a couple of Mage Knights that have been converted. Save a few bucks. We got this vampire guy right here. He's got this staff. He's got these wings. This is pre-painted. I did a little bit of touch-up on the staff, but the paint job I thought was decent enough that I didn't really have to work on it. So So I thought that was good. That was cool. This is one that I did a lot more paint up. This is, I think, a Skeletal Boehm. I based him, painted up the bones. These pauldrons were like a color, I think they were red or blue. Depending on the rarity of the figure, they would have like a yellow, blue, and red kind of thing. And the stats on the click had different stats based on the rarity. I kind of wanted to stick with the bony kind of look, so I stuck with that. Not my best paint job, because the shoulder pauldron started looking more like wood than bone. But, hey, you know what? It works. It's a very scary skeleton type deal. One of my favorites is this here hill giant. This is a big hill giant. I didn't really have to paint him. I just took him off his base, kind of filed down the peg that his foot set on, put him onto a proper, I think I went with a 3-inch base. And he has like small dwarven riders that go on top, and a couple have some crude guns. The riders got like a hammer. There are chains going into the face and everything like that. The axe looks awesome. Super cool figure. Great way to save a few bucks. Totally worth it. Sorry for all the sniffles. I'm kind of sick, which I think is why I'm screwing up by saying pewter. Another method. You've got this is a old Dungeons and Dragons figure from Wizards of the Coast. You can still find these occasionally floating around. It's pre-painted. A lot of them are very terribly pre-painted. This one ain't too bad. But you can find some cheap guys. I've gotten a bunch of dragons in the past that save me a ton of money because they're only like $3 to $5. And I guess in addition to this, you can buy old lead at like yard sales and stuff. This can get very swingy though. Some yard sales will sell like lead for $1 a piece, but if you actively start looking for old lead miniatures, you are going to be spending a lot of money, my friend. Sorry for the rambling video. Sorry it took forever. May your die roll true. Hey, I got a 20. Hey, fuck yeah.